Have you ever felt completely just swamped by information? You've got stacks of articles, reports, maybe your own notes. Just this is mountain of data, and you're thinking, how do I possibly cut through all this noise and find the real insights? Those sort of aha moments.
Oh, absolutely. It's a challenge everyone faces, I think. We're just constantly bombarded, aren't we? And turning that raw, often really dense information into clear, usable understanding that can feel like, yeah, searching for a needle in a haystack, a digital one.
Well, today, on the deep dive, we're aiming to be your shortcut through that.
Oh,
Our mission, as always, is to help you pull out what's truly important, what's interesting. And today we're diving deep into something I find fascinating: how knowledge actually gets built from raw info.
right. It's not magic, there's a process.
Exactly. We're exploring a really systematic, step-by-step method for analyzing qualitative data. Specifically, it's called thematic analysis, and the goal is to build a conceptual model.
Yeah.
And this whole framework, it comes from a pretty cutting-edge paper by Naeem and colleagues from 2023.
And it's important to say this isn't just for academics and ivory towers, you know. Think of it more like a practical roadmap. It's for anyone who really wants to rigorously understand how we get from just observations to actual knowledge.
Yeah, how to get those genuine aha moments.
Precisely. And how to turn lots of separate bits of information into a clear, understandable picture. It really helps you look at research, even complex stuff, and see, okay, this is how they did it. This makes sense. I can trust this.
Exactly. So we're going to walk you through their 6 steps. We'll keep the explanations clear, and we've got some really insightful examples from a study they did on panic buying during the COVID-19 pandemic. Should be interesting.
Yeah, that study really brings the steps to life.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is thematic analysis? We hear the term thrown around a lot, especially in qualitative research. What's the core idea?
Well, at its heart, thematic analysis is a technique, a very popular one, actually, for finding and interpreting patterns or themes, as we call them, within qualitative data. And that data could be interview transcripts, focus group notes, even things like social media posts or images.
So finding the recurring ideas, the patterns.
Exactly. And the Naeem paper specifically tackles a common sticking point. Researchers often identify themes, but then struggle with how to present the final result as a clear, solid conceptual model. This process gives them a structure for that.
Ah, I see. So it adds that layer of structure. And I guess having such a systematic process really boosts the rigor, doesn't it? Makes it more, well, trustworthy and maybe even replicable to some extent.
It absolutely does. It brings a kind of order and transparency to what can sometimes feel a bit interpretive or subjective. It makes the whole analysis more robust.
And is it flexible? Can you use it with different research approaches?
Oh, definitely. That's one of its strengths. This systematic approach works across various methodologies, you know, grounded theory, ethnography, narrative research, even some descriptive approaches that are more positivist. It's a really versatile toolkit.
That's great to know. Okay, so Naeem and his team laid out this 6-step roadmap. You said it takes you from raw data right through to a conceptual model. How does following these steps help ensure you're being thorough and maybe limiting your own biases?
Well, the key thing is that each step builds logically on the one before it. It's sequential. It forces a kind of meticulous, ordered approach to looking at the data, so you're not just jumping to conclusions.
Right, there's a clear trail.
Exactly. That structure inherently makes the findings more rigorous, deeper, and it means your conclusions are grounded in a process someone else can actually follow and understand. It's about transparency.
Okay, let's jump into the journey then. Step 1, the foundation transcription, familiarization, and quotation selection. Faced with, say, hours of interview recordings, where do you even begin?
This is the deep dive part, really. You start by getting the data into a usable format, so usually transcribing audio or video. And then it's about immersion. You read it and reread it, you listen again. You're not just skimming, you're trying to become intimately familiar with everything that's there.
Just soaking it all in.
Pretty much. And as you do that, initial ideas, interesting phrases, important sections, they start to kind of emerge subtly. You start getting a feel for the landscape of the data.
And then you mentioned selecting quotations. You're not just using everything, right? Why is picking specific quotes so important here?
Right, you select them judiciously because these quotes are what bring the data to life. They offer that vivid, direct evidence, often in the participants' own words. You choose quotes that really represent the patterns you're starting to see or diverse viewpoints, and they need to clearly link back to your research questions.
Okay, that makes sense. It anchors the analysis in real voices.
Precisely. And your choices here are also influenced by your philosophical stance as a researcher. For instance, the panic buying study researchers used a social constructionist lens.
Meaning they focused on how shared ideas shape things.
Exactly, how we collectively construct meaning. So they'd select quotes that really showed people making sense of the pandemic together, reacting to rumors, building those shared anxieties. They also used existing theories like protection motivation theory to guide what they were initially looking for in the data.
Got it. Okay, moving on to step 2. Spotting the signals keyword selection. Now, you said this step is quite novel in their approach. What's happening here?
It really is a distinctive step. Here, you're actively identifying recurring words, phrases, or terms directly from the data itself. These aren't just any random words. They're keywords that seem to really capture the essence of participants' experiences or
This
perceptions.
is like little nuggets of meaning.
Kind of, yeah. They form the bedrock for the analysis that comes later. They're the concentrated signals, the most potent bits that will guide you when you start coding and interpreting.
And this is where it gets really specific, because the paper introduces the 6 R's for picking good keywords. Can you unpack that a bit? What makes a keyword powerful according to this framework? Maybe give us a couple of examples.
Sure. The 6 R's are like quality criteria. One really important R is realness. Does the keyword reflect a genuine lived experience? In the panic buying study, things like flood of information or not under control, you immediately feel the real anxiety there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Another R is repetition. If a word or phrase keeps popping up again and again across different participants, that's a strong signal it's significant. Spreading fear, for example, if that comes up a lot.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Frequency matter.
It does. And a third one I'll mention is rationale. This means the keyword should ideally connect back to any theoretical foundations you might be using. So in the panic buying study, keywords like risk or cost of illness directly link to their use of protection motivation theory. It helps ground the analysis right from this early stage.
Okay, so keywords are these potent signals. How do we start grouping them or making sense of them? That seems to lead us to step 3. Translating insights coding. What exactly is coding in this context?
Right. So coding is where you start assigning short phrases or labels codes to specific segments of your data. Think of it as translating the raw data into a more theoretical language. You're capturing the core message or the meaning of that chunk of text or observation.
So moving from specific words to slightly broader labels.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
You're simplifying complex information into manageable units. And those keywords you just identified, they're really crucial here. They often guide you in developing the initial codes.
Now, I know there are different ways to approach coding. People talk about inductive or deductive. Can you quickly explain the difference?
Yeah, definitely. So inductive coding is often called bottom-up. It's exploratory. The codes arise directly from the data. You let the data speak for itself, allowing new ideas you didn't anticipate to surface.
Okay, data-driven.
Exactly. Then there's deductive coding, which is top-down. This is where you start with pre-existing theories or a framework. You read the data through that theoretical lens, looking for evidence that fits or maybe challenges the theory.
Right, so testing existing ideas.
Pretty much.
So as a researcher, do you have to strictly pick one or the other?
Oh, not at all. And that's a key point. You can use them separately, but very often researchers use a hybrid approach, combining both. The panic buying study is a perfect example.
How so?
Well, they had codes like provoke perception or anxiety, which clearly lined up with protection motivation theory that's deductive. But then they also found completely new things emerging directly from what people said, leading to codes like obscurity and prevailing content. That's the inductive part, discovering something fresh.
I see. So you get the best of both worlds, potentially. And, surprise, surprise, the paper offers another set of R's for coding. What makes for a strong, effective coding strategy according to them?
Yes, they love their R's. For coding, two important ones are robust and reflective. A robust code really captures the theoretical essence of that data segment. So their code provoke perception, for instance, wasn't just a label. It embodied deeper keyword concepts like tension.
Okay, it has substance.
Right. And a reflective code shows a clear link between the raw data, the facts, and the theoretical ideas you're building. So a code like prevailing content reflected participants really thinking critically about the quality of the information they were getting during the pandemic. These R's just help ensure your codes are analytically sound, not just superficial labels.
That's incredibly detailed. Okay, so we've journeyed from raw data to keywords to coding. What's next? Step 4, building the narrative theme development. How are themes different from codes? What's the goal here?
Good question. Themes are definitely more abstract than codes. Think of codes as the individual bricks, maybe. Themes are more like the walls or even rooms you build with those bricks. They represent broader patterns of meaning that connect your research questions to your data.
So higher level patterns.
Exactly. It's about identifying relationships, trends, overarching ideas that cut across multiple codes. This step really relies on the researcher's analytical skills and their theoretical understanding to synthesize those codes into something more meaningful and abstract.
And how do the key words from way back in step 2 play a role here in developing themes?
They're still really important. Keywords act as sort of anchor points. When you're trying to group codes together into a potential theme, you often look back at the underlying keywords associated with those codes. Do they share similar meanings? Do they relate to each other in some way?
So the keywords help keep the themes grounded.
Precisely. They help you identify potential themes and also refine them, making sure the theme accurately represents what's in the data, rooted in the participant's own language via those keywords.
Now, forming themes sounds like it involves some judgment calls. How do you ensure these themes are solid and well supported? I sense another R framework coming.
You sense correctly. The 4 Rs for thematic decision-making. 2 that are really key are reciprocal and responsive. Reciprocal means the theme should be built on clear, mutual connections between the codes it groups together.
So the codes naturally belong together.
Yes. For example, in the panic buying study, codes like obscurity, lack of clear info, and eminence, importance of the source, were grouped under misinformation and rumors because they clearly related to each other in how people processed pandemic news.
Okay. And responsive.
Responsive means the theme needs to actually help answer your research questions or meet your study's aims. Even if it wasn't a question you initially asked, does this theme provide valuable insight relevant to your overall goals? Like the theme perceived consequences in their study, it directly addressed the impact of panic buying, which was central.
Got it. Themes need to be internally coherent and externally relevant.
You've nailed it.
Okay, we've built themes from codes, which came from keywords, which came from the raw data. What's step 5? Crystallizing, meaning conceptualization through interpretation. Sounds like we're polishing things up now.
That's a good way to put it. Conceptualization is about developing sharp, working definitions for the key concepts that have emerged from your analysis. You're essentially naming and defining the important social patterns or ideas you've uncovered.
So putting a precise label and definition on the big ideas.
Exactly. It involves really understanding the range of meaning for each concept and identifying the specific evidence, the codes, the keywords, the quotes that support its existence in your data. You're giving clear shape and boundaries to the insights.
And what makes for a good conceptual definition here?
Well, the paper mentions things like clarity, accuracy, reliability. Does it consistently apply? But critically, it's about its applicability to the context and its potential contribution to theory or practice. And crucially, you need trackability.
Trackability, meaning?
Meaning you can always trace that concept definition right back through the steps to the themes, the codes, the keywords, the original data. It shows it's not just an abstract idea you plucked from nowhere. It's firmly rooted in the evidence.
Right, maintaining that audit trail. Very important. Okay, this has all been building towards step 6, the grand finale development of the conceptual model. This must be the ultimate payoff.
It really is. This is where you create that unique, often visual representation of your findings. It brings together the key concepts and themes, showing how they relate to each other, often guided or informed by existing theories. It's the big picture, the story your analysis tells.
Now, you mentioned theories. Is there a difference between a theoretical framework we might start with and this conceptual model we end up with?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a really important distinction. A theoretical framework usually refers to established, well-tested theories that exist out there in the literature. It might be the lens you use to start your inquiry.
Okay, the existing foundation.
Right. Whereas a conceptual model is your specific formulation based directly on your findings from this study. It's novel. It might draw on existing theories, but it represents the unique contribution of your research.
Can you give an example from the panic buying study?
Sure. They started with existing theories, theory of rumor transmission and protection motivation theory. That was their theoretical framework. But their conceptual model actually added new dimensions that emerged from their data, like obscurity and eminence, specifically to the theory of rumor transmission. They refined the existing theory based on their findings.
So the model shows their unique contribution. And does the way they approach the research, like inductive or deductive, influence what the final model looks like?
Definitely. If you were purely inductive, your model would likely be built entirely from the themes that emerged fresh from the data, potentially proposing a brand new theory or understanding.
Okay.
If you were more deductive, your model might show how your findings confirm or perhaps slightly modify an existing theory. The panic buying study, being hybrid, did a bit of both. It generated new insights and validated parts of existing theories. The model ultimately serves as a clear map of the key factors and their relationships, justifying why the study matters theoretically.
Wow, that's a comprehensive journey. So, stepping back from the details, why does going through all these systematic steps really matter for us, the listeners, when we encounter research like this?
Well, fundamentally, this kind of rigorous step-by-step process massively enhances the trustworthiness and the coherence of qualitative findings. You can see how they got there.
Right, it's not a black box.
Exactly. And the paper argues that its specific additions, like that explicit keyword selection step and the clear guidance on building the conceptual model, really boost the validity. It gives you a well-structured, defensible interpretation. It shows how you can take messy, rich human data and transform it into clear, impactful knowledge in a way that isn't just arbitrary.
Absolutely. So this deep dive gives us a really robust, versatile, and theoretically solid method. And it feels like something you can use not just to evaluate research, but maybe even to think about how you process complex information yourself.
I think so. It provides a framework for understanding how deep knowledge actually gets constructed from the ground up. It's about having that transparent path from description to insight.
Okay, so to wrap up, we've really unpacked how this systematic thematic analysis can transform that thick, sometimes overwhelming descriptive data into clear conceptual models, revealing those hidden patterns and insights. You've essentially got a roadmap now for understanding how knowledge is built from raw information.
It's a powerful way to make sense of complexity, for sure.
And that leads to a final provocative thought for you to maybe mull over.
Hmm.
Think about how this systematic approach, identifying key signals, finding underlying themes, connecting disparate facts into a coherent picture, isn't just for academic papers.
Yeah.
How could you apply these principles in your own life? Maybe when you're tackling a really complex project or trying to make sense of the flood of news or even just understanding your own experiences. Could focusing on keywords, looking for themes, and building your own mini conceptual models help bring clarity? Something to think about.